The hills of Sicily held their secrets close, wrapped in the silver mist that rose each morning from the valley below. Rosa Benedetti stood at the edge of her small farm, her weathered hands gripping the wooden fence post as she watched the dirt road that snaked up from the distant village. She had learned long ago to read the language of dust clouds, the difference between a farmer's cart and something far more dangerous. This morning the dust rose in a way that made her bones ache with memory. The farm sat on a plateau carved from the hillside, a patchwork of vegetable gardens, a small orchard of lemon and olive trees, and a stone house with walls thick enough to keep out the summer heat and the winter cold. Chickens scratched in the yard, a goat bleated from its pen, and inside the house 7 children were beginning to stir, their voices rising in the gentle chaos of morning. Rosa had been running this place for 23 years. 23 years since she had fled the life she once knew, carrying nothing but the clothes on her back and a heart full of grief. The children came to her one by one, abandoned or orphaned, brought by priests or left at her gate in the dark of night. She asked no questions. She simply opened her door. The oldest was 15 now, a girl named Lucia with dark eyes that had seen too much. The youngest was 4, a boy called Tommaso who still cried for a mother he could barely remember. And then there was Marco. Marco was 12, thin and quiet, with black hair that fell across his forehead and eyes the color of storm clouds. He had arrived 5 years ago, carried up the hill by a priest who said only that the boy's mother had died and that there was no one else. Rosa had taken him in without hesitation, as she always did, but Marco was different from the others. He rarely spoke. He watched everything, and sometimes, late at night, she would find him standing at the window, staring down at the road as if he were waiting for something. She had never asked him what. The dust cloud grew larger, and Rosa's grip on the fence tightened. 3 black cars emerged from the curve in the road, moving slowly, deliberately. They were not the cars of farmers or merchants. They were the cars of men who did not need to hurry because everyone else would wait. Rosa felt the old fear settle into her chest like a stone. She turned and walked back toward the house, her steps steady, despite the trembling in her legs. Inside, the children were gathering around the long wooden table for breakfast. Lucia was slicing bread. Marco sat at the far end, his gaze distant. "Lucia," Rosa said quietly, "take the children to the back room, all of them, now." Lucia looked up, her knife pausing mid-slice. She had lived with Rosa long enough to know that tone. "What is it? Do as I say." The girl set down the knife and began ushering the younger children toward the narrow hallway that led to the storage room at the back of the house. Tommaso protested, clutching his wooden toy horse, but Lucia scooped him up with practiced ease. Marco remained seated, his eyes locked on Rosa. "You too, Marco," Rosa said. "Who's coming?" he asked. His voice was soft but steady, holding a weight that no 12-year-old should carry. "People from before. People who have nothing to do with you. You're lying." Rosa crossed the room and placed her hand on his shoulder. His bones felt small beneath her palm, fragile despite the steel she sensed in him. "Please, Marco, go with the others." For a long moment, he stared at her. Then he stood and walked toward the hallway, his steps slow, reluctant. He paused at the threshold and looked back. "If they've come for me, hiding won't matter." Before Rosa could respond, he disappeared into the shadows. The sound of car doors slamming echoed across the yard. Rosa smoothed her apron, straightened her spine, and walked to the front door. She opened it before they could knock. 3 men stood on her threshold. The first was tall and broad-shouldered, his black suit tailored perfectly despite the dust of the road. His face was hard, carved from the same stone as the mountains, and his eyes held the cold calculation of a man who had made difficult decisions and slept well afterward. This was a Capo. Rosa knew the look. Behind him stood 2 soldiers, younger men with hands that rested too casually near their waists, where guns surely waited. They scanned the farm with professional efficiency, noting exits, cover, vulnerabilities. The Capo removed his hat. "Signora Benedetti." It was not a question. He knew her name. That alone told Rosa everything she needed to know about how thoroughly they had prepared for this visit. "I am she," Rosa said. Her voice did not waver. "My name is Salvatore Greco. I serve Don Vittorio Castellano. May we come inside? This is a home for children, not for men of your profession." Something flickered in Greco's eyes. Surprise, perhaps, or amusement. "You mistake our intentions, Signora. We have not come to bring trouble to your door. We have come to collect what belongs to the Don. There is nothing here that belongs to anyone but God and these children. Then perhaps we should discuss one child in particular." Greco's gaze drifted past her, toward the dim interior of the house. "A boy named Marco. I believe he has been living under your care for some time now." Rosa's heart hammered against her ribs, but her face remained calm. "All the children here have been living under my care. They are orphans. They have no one else." "This boy is not an orphan," Greco said. "His father was Don Alessandro Castellano. His mother was a woman from the village who kept the Don's secret until her death. The boy carries the Don's blood, and now that blood is needed." "Needed for what?" "That is not your concern." "Any child under my roof is my concern." Greco's jaw tightened. He glanced at his men, then back at Rosa. When he spoke again, his voice had hardened. "Signora, I will be clear because I respect your age and your work here. Don Alessandro was murdered 3 years ago by a rival family. The vendetta remains open. Marco is his only son, the only heir. He will be brought into the family and taught his place. This is not a request. The boy knows nothing of this life. He is innocent. No one born to our world is innocent, Signora. You of all people should understand that." The words landed like a blow. Rosa felt the past rising around her, suffocating in its familiarity. "I left that world long ago." "Did you?" Greco stepped closer, and Rosa caught the scent of expensive cologne and gun oil. "You are Rosa Benedetti, widow of Luca Benedetti, who served as Consigliere to Don Vincenzo Moretti. Your husband was accused of betrayal. He disappeared one night, and so did you. Many believed you both were dead, but here you are, hiding in the hills, surrounded by children." Rosa's throat tightened. "Luca was innocent. He was murdered for a lie. Perhaps, but you ran instead of demanding justice. You chose silence over the code. I chose survival. And now, survival demands payment." Greco's voice softened, but the threat beneath it remained sharp as a blade. "Give us the boy, willingly, and your farm will remain untouched. You may continue your work here in peace. Refuse, and I cannot guarantee what will happen." Rosa looked into his eyes and saw no mercy there, only duty, only the terrible logic of the Mafia, where every debt must be paid and every bloodline preserved. "I need time to prepare him," she said finally. "You have until tomorrow evening. We will return at sunset." Greco replaced his hat and turned to leave. Then he paused. "One more thing, Signora. Do not make the mistake of running again. There is nowhere in Sicily where we will not find you. And if we must hunt the boy, the consequences will be far worse than you can imagine." The 3 men walked back to their cars. Rosa stood in the doorway, watching them drive away, the dust settling slowly in their wake. When the last echo of their engines faded, she closed the door and leaned against it, her strength finally giving way. Lucia emerged from the hallway, her face pale. "Nonna Rosa, what do they want?" Rosa straightened. "Gather the children. We need to talk." In the back room, 7 faces turned toward her. 6 were frightened. One, Marco's, was eerily calm. "They've come for me," he said. "Yes. Who was my father?" Rosa sat down heavily on a wooden crate. The truth, she realized, could no longer be avoided. "Your father was a Don, a powerful man. He was killed, and now his family wants you to take his place." "I don't want that. It doesn't matter what you want. In their world, blood is everything." Marco stood and walked to the small window that overlooked the farm. Outside, the sun was climbing higher, casting golden light across the fields. "My mother told me once that my father was a dangerous man. She said I should never try to find him. She said if I stayed hidden I could be free. She was trying to protect you. But she died anyway." His voice cracked just slightly. "And now there's no one left to protect me but you." Rosa rose and joined him at the window. She placed a hand on his shoulder, feeling the tension coiled there. "I will not let them take you without a fight. They'll kill you. They'll kill everyone here. Then we must be smarter than they are." Marco looked up at her, and for the first time since she had known him, she saw something break open in his expression. Hope, fragile and desperate. How? Rosa thought of the years she had spent in the shadows of the Mafia world. She thought of her husband, Luca, who had counseled Dons and navigated the treacherous waters of loyalty and betrayal. She thought of the secrets she had learned, the alliances forged in whispers, the debts owed and never forgotten. "I know people," she said quietly, "people who still remember Luca, people who might help us. But we must move carefully. One wrong step and everything will collapse." Lucia stepped forward. "What do you need us to do?" Rosa looked at the faces around her, these children who had become her family, who had given her a reason to keep living when everything else had been taken away. "We prepare, we plan, and we survive." As the sun climbed higher and the day stretched on, Rosa sent Lucia to the village with a carefully worded message for Father Matteo, the priest who had brought Marco to her years ago. If anyone could reach the old networks, it was him. Meanwhile, Rosa taught the children how to hide, how to move silently through the house, how to recognize danger before it arrived. She showed them the root cellar beneath the kitchen floor, accessible through a hidden trapdoor, and the narrow path through the olive grove that led down the back of the hill. Marco watched it all with those storm-grey eyes, absorbing every detail. That night, after the others had gone to bed, he found Rosa sitting by the fireplace, mending an old shirt. "Nonna Rosa," he said, "if my father was a Don, does that mean I'm evil too?" Rosa set down her needle. "Your blood does not define you, Marco. Your choices do. But they won't give me a choice. Then we make one for you." He sat beside her, and for a long time they watched the fire burn down to embers. Outside, the hills kept their secrets, and in the valley below, 3 black cars waited in the shadows, engines cold, patience infinite. Tomorrow, Rosa knew, the real battle would begin. Father Matteo arrived at dawn, his old bicycle leaning against the stone wall as he caught his breath in the cool morning air. He was a thin man in his 60s, with white hair and hands that trembled slightly from age or fear. Rosa could never tell which. She met him at the gate, away from the house where the children still slept. "You summoned me with urgency," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "What has happened?" "They know about Marco." The priest's face went pale. He made the sign of the cross, his lips moving in silent prayer. "After all these years, I had hoped. Hope is a luxury we no longer have, Father. They came yesterday. A capo named Salvatore Greco. He says Marco is the son of Don Alessandro Castellano, and they want him back." "Dio mio!" Father Matteo gripped the fence post for support. "Alessandro was murdered 3 years ago. The family has been weak ever since. They need an heir. They need a puppet. A child they can mold into whatever serves their purposes." Rosa's voice was hard. "I will not let them have him. Rosa, you cannot fight the Castellano family. They control half of Sicily. Even in hiding, even here in these hills, you are not beyond their reach." "I know. That is why I need your help." The priest looked at her with tired, knowing eyes. "What would you have me do? You still have contacts. Men who remember the old codes, who might honor a debt. My husband served Don Vincenzo Moretti faithfully for 20 years before he was betrayed. There must be someone who remembers, someone who owes our family." Father Matteo was silent for a long moment. The sun crept over the eastern hills, painting the sky in shades of rose and gold. "There is one man," he said finally, "Pietro Santoro. He was underboss to Don Vincenzo when your husband was Consigliere. After the Don died and the family fractured, Pietro went into retirement. He lives in Palermo now, running a small restaurant near the harbor. He is old like us, but he still commands respect. Would he help? I do not know. The code is clear, family comes first. But Pietro was always fond of Luca. He believed in his innocence when others did not. If anyone would help you, it would be him. Can you reach him? I can send word." "But Rosa, even if he agrees to help, what can one old underboss do against an entire family?" Rosa turned to look back at the house, where smoke was beginning to rise from the kitchen chimney. Lucia would be making breakfast. The children would be waking. Marco would be standing at that window watching the road. "I do not know yet, Father, but I know I cannot simply hand that boy over to men who will turn him into a killer. He is already a killer by blood. Blood is not destiny." The priest studied her face, seeing something there that made him nod slowly. "I will go to Palermo today. I will speak to Pietro. But you must promise me something, Rosa." "What? If this goes wrong, if the violence comes to your door, you will send the other children away. You will not let them die for Marco's sake." Rosa felt the weight of that request settle over her like a shroud. "I promise." Father Matteo blessed her, mounted his bicycle, and disappeared down the hill. Rosa watched him go, then returned to the house. Inside, the children were gathered around the table. Lucia had made bread and goat cheese. Tommaso was complaining about having to eat vegetables. The twins, Angelo and Sophia, were arguing over who got to feed the chickens. It was all so normal, so fragile, so precious. Marco sat at his usual spot at the far end of the table, but he was not eating. His eyes were fixed on Rosa. "Is he going to help?" the boy asked. The other children fell silent, their fear surfacing despite their attempts to hide it. "He is going to try," Rosa said. She sat down and reached for the bread, though her appetite had vanished. "But until we know more, we must be careful. No one goes to the village, no one speaks to strangers, and we watch the road." "For how long?" Lucia asked. As long as it takes. The day passed with agonizing slowness. Rosa kept the children busy with chores, tending the garden, feeding the animals, mending clothes. Work was a mercy, a distraction from the fear that hung over them like storm clouds. But the fear remained, coiled tight in every chest. In the afternoon, Rosa took Marco aside to the small shed where she kept her tools. She closed the door behind them and lit an oil lamp, casting shadows across the rough wooden walls. "Sit," she said, gesturing to an overturned crate. Marco sat. Rosa pulled out a small wooden box from beneath a workbench and opened it. Inside was a folded piece of paper, yellowed with age, and a photograph. She handed the photograph to Marco. It showed a man in his 40s, handsome and serious, standing beside a younger woman. The woman was smiling, her hand resting on her swollen belly. Marco stared at the image, his fingers trembling. "That is your mother," Rosa said softly, "and that is your father." "Don Alessandro," Marco whispered. "Yes, your mother was a seamstress in the village. She met him when she was hired to make suits for the family. He was already married, of course, a political marriage to strengthen alliances, but he loved your mother, or so she believed. Did he know about me?" "Yes, he provided for you both in secret. Money, protection, a small house on the edge of the village. But when the war between families began, your mother feared what might happen if you were discovered. She gave you to Father Matteo and asked him to take you somewhere safe. She died a month later. Pneumonia, they said. But there were whispers." Marco looked up sharply. "What kind of whispers?" Rosa hesitated. "That she was poisoned, that someone in the family discovered the secret and decided you were better off orphaned than claimed. Who? I do not know. But there are always those who see bastard children as threats rather than heirs. Your existence complicates bloodlines, inheritance, loyalty. Some would have preferred you never existed at all." Marco set the photograph down carefully, as if it might shatter. "And now they need me." "Yes, because Don Alessandro died without a legitimate heir. His wife was barren. You are the only one who carries his blood. To them you are a tool, a symbol, a way to reclaim power. What if I refuse? What if I run? They will hunt you, and they will destroy everyone who helped you." Rosa reached out and took his hand. Her skin was rough and calloused, a farmer's hand, but her grip was strong. "But there may be another way." "What way?" "We wait for Father Matteo to return. We see if Pietro Santoro will help. And if he does, we find a way to make you valuable enough to protect but dangerous enough that they cannot simply use you as they wish." Marco frowned. "I do not understand. In the Mafia world, power is everything. But power comes in many forms. If we can prove that taking you by force will cost them more than it gains them, they may be willing to negotiate, to compromise. How do we do that?" Rosa leaned closer, her voice dropping to barely a whisper. "We remind them that I am the widow of Luca Benedetti, and Luca kept secrets, secrets that could destroy families if they were ever revealed." Marco's eyes widened. "Do you have proof?" "I have documents, ledgers, names. Your husband's records of every deal, every betrayal, every blood debt incurred by Don Vincenzo and his allies. Luca was a meticulous man. He believed that knowledge was the ultimate protection. When he realized he was in danger, he gave everything to me and told me to run if anything happened to him. And you have kept these documents all this time. Hidden, safe. I never intended to use them. But now," Rosa released his hand and stood. "Now they may be the only leverage we have." That evening, as the sun began its descent toward the horizon, Rosa stood once more at the fence, watching the road. The deadline was approaching. By sunset tomorrow, Salvatore Greco would return. Behind her the children were finishing their evening chores. Lucia was singing softly to Tommaso, trying to calm his fears. Angelo and Sofia were arguing again, their voices a welcome sound of normalcy. And Marco was standing at the window, as always, watching. Rosa thought of Luca. She thought of the night he had come home with blood on his hands and terror in his eyes, telling her they had to leave, that they had been betrayed, that Don Vincenzo had ordered his death over a lie someone had planted. She thought of how he had kissed her forehead and told her to run to the hills to the old farm her grandmother had left her, to start over. She thought of how she had never seen him again. The Mafia had taken so much from her, her husband, her old life, her innocence. And now they wanted to take Marco, this quiet boy who had somehow become the son she never had. She would not let them. As darkness fell over the hills, a single pair of headlights appeared on the distant road. But this was not the convoy of black cars. This was something smaller, moving quickly. Rosa's heart quickened. Father Matteo's bicycle had no headlights. The vehicle pulled up to the gate. A dusty sedan, unremarkable and old. The driver's door opened, and a man stepped out. He was perhaps 70, with silver hair and a face carved by time and hard decisions. He wore a simple grey suit, no tie, and his eyes were sharp despite his age. Pietro Santoro had come. Rosa walked to meet him at the gate. They regarded each other in silence for a long moment, two survivors of a world that had tried to devour them both. "Rosa Benedetti," Pietro said finally. His voice was rough, like gravel underfoot. "It has been a long time, too long, Don Pietro. I am no longer a Don, just an old man who makes pasta and tries to forget. Yet you came. Father Matteo spoke of a boy, Luca's boy, he said, though I know that is not quite true. He said the Castellanos want to claim him. He said, you need help. I need a miracle." Pietro smiled faintly. "Those are in short supply these days, but perhaps we can manage something smaller. May I come inside?" Rosa opened the gate and led him to the house. The children had been sent to their rooms, but she could feel their eyes watching from behind curtains and cracked doors. In the kitchen, she poured 2 glasses of wine and sat across from Pietro at the old wooden table. "Tell me everything," he said, and so she did. She told him about Marco's arrival, about the years of peace, about Greco's visit and the ultimatum. She told him about the documents Luca had left her, the secrets that could shake the foundations of multiple families. Pietro listened without interrupting, his expression unreadable. When she finished, he took a long drink of wine and set the glass down carefully. "You are playing a dangerous game, Rosa. I have no choice. There is always a choice. You could give them the boy. You could return to your quiet life. That is not a choice. That is surrender." Pietro studied her face, and something like respect flickered in his eyes. "Luca was right about you. He said you had steel in your spine. I did not believe him then, I do now. Will you help me? What exactly do you want me to do? I want you to negotiate. You still have connections, respect. If you speak for me, they will listen. I want to propose a trade. The boy stays here, under my care, until he is old enough to choose his own path. In exchange, the documents remain hidden. No one needs to know what Luca recorded. No blood is spilled. And if they refuse, then I will release the documents to the authorities. The police, the newspapers. Everyone will know what was done, who was betrayed, which families broke the code. It will be chaos." Pietro let out a long breath. "You would destroy the old ways completely. If that is what it takes to save this boy, yes." For a long moment, Pietro said nothing. Then he nodded slowly. "Very well. I will speak to Salvatore Greco tomorrow before sunset. I will present your terms. But Rosa, you must understand. If this goes wrong, there will be no mercy. Not for you, not for the children, not for anyone. I understand." "Good." Pietro stood and drained the last of his wine. "I will return in the morning. We will prepare together. And Rosa, yes, pray that I have not grown too old and useless to convince men who are younger and hungrier than I am." After he left, Rosa sat alone in the kitchen, the lamp burning low. Through the wall, she could hear the children's breathing, soft and steady. Marco appeared in the doorway, a shadow among shadows. "Is he going to help?" the boy asked. "He is going to try. What happens if it does not work?" Rosa looked at him, this child who carried the blood of killers and the innocence of one who had been spared their world. "Then we fight." Marco nodded slowly and disappeared back into the darkness. Rosa sat for a long time, listening to the wind move through the olive trees, feeling the weight of the choice she had made. Tomorrow everything would change, one way or another. The sun rose blood-red over the hills, and Rosa took it as an omen. She had not slept. Instead, she had spent the night in the cellar beneath the kitchen, retrieving the metal box she had buried 23 years ago. Inside were Luca's ledgers, 3 leather-bound notebooks filled with dates, names, amounts, and transactions that mapped the skeleton of the Sicilian Mafia like an anatomist's chart. Every deal, every murder, every betrayal. Her hands trembled as she opened the first page and saw her husband's careful handwriting. Even now, after all these years, seeing those familiar loops and curves made her throat tighten with grief. Luca had been a good man trapped in a bad world, trying to navigate impossible loyalties. In the end, it had killed him. She would not let it kill Marco. Pietro arrived as promised, just after dawn. He had brought someone with him, a younger man, perhaps 50. with watchful eyes and the build of someone who had spent a lifetime ready for violence. Pietro introduced him as Dante, his former bodyguard, and the closest thing he had to family now. "If this turns into a fight, you will need more than an old man and prayers," Pietro said simply. Rosa nodded her thanks. She served them coffee and bread, while the children remained hidden upstairs, their fear a palpable presence in the house. Only Marco ventured down, standing in the doorway with that same unreadable expression he always wore. Pietro studied the boy for a long moment. "You are Alessandro's son. I can see it in your eyes." He had that same look, like he was always watching, always calculating. "I did not know him," Marco said quietly. "Perhaps that is a blessing." Pietro turned back to Rosa. "Show me what Luca left you." Rosa placed the ledgers on the table. Pietro opened the first one, his eyes scanning the pages with practiced efficiency. As he read, his expression darkened. He turned page after page, occasionally pausing to shake his head or mutter under his breath. Finally, he closed the book and looked at Rosa with something between admiration and horror. Luca documented everything, every payment made to corrupt officials, every politician bought, every judge compromised, every murder ordered by the 5 families. He tapped the cover. "This is enough to bring down the entire structure of power in Western Sicily. Will it be enough to convince them to leave Marco alone? It will be enough to make them very, very afraid." Pietro stood and paced to the window, looking out at the road. "But fear is a dangerous tool, Rosa. Frightened men make desperate choices. If they believe you will truly release these documents, they may decide it is better to kill you all and take their chances with the chaos. Then we must convince them I will not release them unless they force my hand." "How?" "We offer them something they want more than vengeance. We offer them peace, stability, a future where old secrets remain buried and new alliances can be formed without the weight of the past crushing them." Pietro turned back to her, a slight smile on his weathered face. "You learned well from Luca. He would be proud. He would be ashamed that I must use his work this way. No, he would understand. Survival always comes first." Pietro glanced at his watch. "Greco will arrive in 6 hours. We should prepare what we are going to say, and we should decide where this meeting will happen." "Here," Rosa said firmly. "On my land. They come to me. That puts you at greater risk. Everything about this puts me at risk. But if I meet them elsewhere, I have no control. Here, I have the children, the house, the land I know. Here, I have witnesses. Witnesses can be silenced. Not easily. Not all at once." Rosa's voice was hard, "and not without making noise that will be heard." Pietro considered this, then nodded. "Very well. We do it here. But Dante will be watching from the grove. If things go wrong, if violence starts, he will make sure at least one person escapes to tell what happened." Rosa looked at Marco, who was still standing in the doorway, absorbing every word. "Lucia will take the younger children to the back of the property when Greco arrives. Marco will stay with me." "No," Pietro said sharply. "The boy should be hidden. If Greco sees him, he may try to take him by force. If Greco does not see him, he will think I am bluffing. He will think the boy has already been moved or hidden somewhere he can find later. Marco must be visible, present, real." Rosa met Pietro's eyes. "He must see what he is trying to take from me." After a long silence, Pietro nodded. "You are either very wise or very foolish. I pray it is the former." The hours crawled by like wounded animals. Rosa went through the motions of the day, feeding the chickens, watering the garden, preparing a simple lunch that no one could eat. Lucia kept the younger children occupied with songs and stories, her voice steady despite the fear Rosa could see in her eyes. Marco helped Pietro and Dante prepare. They walked the property, noting sight lines and escape routes. Dante positioned himself in the olive grove with a pair of binoculars and a rifle he had brought in a canvas bag. He would watch, he would wait, and if necessary, he would act. By mid-afternoon, everything was ready. Rosa changed into her best dress, a simple black garment she had worn to funerals and feast days. She pinned her silver hair back and looked at herself in the cracked mirror above the kitchen basin. The woman staring back at her was old, worn by sun and work and grief. But her eyes were steady. She was ready. At 5 o'clock, as the sun began its slow descent, the dust appeared on the road. 3 black cars, just as before. Rosa stood at the gate with Pietro beside her and Marco slightly behind, his face pale but composed. Lucia had taken the other children to the back room as planned. The cars stopped. Doors opened. Salvatore Greco emerged, flanked by the same 2 soldiers from before. But this time there were others, 4 more men, all armed, all watching with the predatory alertness of trained killers. Greco's expression shifted when he saw Pietro. Surprise flickered across his face, followed quickly by calculation. He approached the gate but did not open it. "Don Pietro," he said, his voice carefully neutral. "I did not expect to see you here." "Life is full of surprises, Salvatore." Pietro's tone was mild, but there was steel beneath it. "I have come at Signora Benedetti's request to act as mediator in this matter." "There is nothing to mediate. The boy belongs to the Castellano family. We have come to collect him. The boy is under Signora Benedetti's protection, and she has made a counter-offer that you would be wise to hear." Greco's jaw tightened. He glanced at Marco, and Rosa saw recognition flash in his eyes. The shape of the face, the set of the shoulders, the ghost of Don Alessandro staring back at him. "With respect, Don Pietro, this is family business. It does not concern outsiders. I am no outsider. I knew Alessandro. I knew his father before him. I served with honor when honor still meant something. And I am telling you now that there is more at stake here than one boy's bloodline." "What are you talking about?" Pietro gestured to Rosa. "The Signora wishes to speak. You will listen. Then you will make your choice." Greco studied them for a long moment, weighing options, measuring threats. Finally he nodded curtly. "Speak then, but make it quick. My patience has limits." Rosa stepped forward, her hands clasped in front of her. "You want Marco because he is Alessandro's son. You need him to legitimize your family's claim to power, to show that the bloodline continues. I understand this, but you must also understand what I am offering to protect him." She pulled a folded paper from her pocket, a single page copied from Luca's ledger. She passed it through the bars of the gate. Greco took it, unfolded it, and read. His face went pale. "Where did you get this?" "My husband was Consigliere to Don Vincenzo Moretti. He kept detailed records of everything, every transaction, every alliance, every murder ordered by your family and others. I have 3 full ledgers, Salvatore. And if you try to take Marco by force, I will give them to the authorities." "You are bluffing." "Am I?" Rosa's voice was calm, certain. "Test me and find out. But know this, if those ledgers become public, the Castellano family will not be the only one destroyed. Half the families in Sicily will fall. Politicians will be arrested. Judges will flee. The entire structure will collapse into chaos." Greco's hand crumpled the paper. "How you would destroy everything over one boy? I would destroy everything to protect what is mine. He is not yours. He is ours. He is his own. And I am offering you a way to have peace without blood." Rosa took a breath. "Marco stays here, under my care, until he turns 18. During that time, he will learn about his father's world, but will not be forced into it. When he comes of age, he will choose whether to join the family or walk away. In exchange, the ledgers remain hidden. Your secrets stay secret. No one is destroyed. And if we refuse, then I release the ledgers, and we all burn together." Silence fell over the farm like a shroud. Even the wind seemed to hold its breath. Greco stared at Rosa, his mind clearly racing through possibilities, weighing consequences, measuring the sincerity of her threat. Finally he spoke. "I cannot make this decision alone. I must speak to Don Vittorio, then speak to him. But understand, if you come back with violence, you will regret it. Not because I am strong, but because I have nothing left to lose." Greco's eyes shifted to Marco. The boy met his gaze without flinching, and something passed between them, recognition of shared blood perhaps, or the acknowledgement of a burden neither had asked for. "Don Vittorio will hear of this," Greco said. "We will return tomorrow with his answer. We will be waiting." Greco turned and walked back to the cars. His men followed, casting wary glances at the farm, at Pietro, at the olive grove where they surely sensed unseen eyes watching. The engines started. The cars pulled away, leaving only dust and unanswered questions. Rosa sagged against the gatepost. Pietro caught her elbow, steadying her. "You did well. It is not over." "No, but you bought time. That is something." Marco approached, his face still pale but his voice steady. "Will they honor the agreement?" "That depends on Don Vittorio," Pietro said. "He is old school, a man who values the code above all else, but he is also desperate. His family has been weak since Alessandro's death. He needs you. What if need makes him take me anyway? Then we fight." Rosa straightened, finding strength she had not known she still possessed. "But tonight, we rest. Tomorrow, we face whatever comes. As darkness fell, Dante returned from the grove. The younger children emerged from hiding, their relief palpable. Lucia made a simple dinner and they all sat together at the long table, eating in near silence. Afterward, as Rosa tucked Tommaso into bed, the little boy looked up at her with wide eyes. "Are the bad men going to take Marco away?" "Not if I can help it, Piccolo. I do not want him to go. He is my brother." Rosa kissed his forehead. "I know. Sleep now. Tomorrow will be better." But as she said the words, she did not know if she believed them. That night, Rosa sat by the window with the ledgers open in her lap. Pietro had retired to the small guest room. Dante kept watch outside, a silent guardian against the darkness, and Marco, unable to sleep, came to sit beside her. "My mother used to tell me stories about knights and dragons," he said quietly. "She said that sometimes the dragon was not really evil, just misunderstood, lonely. Your mother was kind. She was scared, I could always tell even when she smiled. She was scared of something she would not name." He looked down at his hands. "Now I know what it was. My father's world. The world I was born into but never asked for. You do not have to become what they want you to be. Do I have a choice?" Rosa closed the ledger and set it aside. She took his hand, small and cold, in hers. "There is always a choice, Marco. Even when it seems there is not. Your father made his choices. Your mother made hers. Now you will make yours, and whatever you choose, I will stand with you. Even if it means fighting? Especially then." Marco leaned his head against her shoulder, and Rosa felt the weight of his trust settle over her, like a blessing and a burden. Outside, the hills kept their watch, and somewhere in the valley below, Don Vittorio Castellano was deciding the fate of them all. Tomorrow would bring answers. Tomorrow would bring judgment. Tomorrow would bring either salvation or destruction, and Rosa Benedetti, widow of a murdered Consigliere, guardian of orphaned children, keeper of dangerous secrets, would face it with her head held high, because some things were worth dying for. And this boy, this quiet, haunted, hopeful boy, was one of them. Don Vittorio Castellano had not left his estate in 3 years. The sprawling villa sat on a hillside overlooking the coast, surrounded by high walls and armed guards, who watched the roads with the discipline of soldiers. Inside, the Don lived like a ghost from another era, among portraits of dead ancestors, furniture carved from dark wood, and chandeliers that had witnessed generations of blood oaths and broken promises. He was 81 years old, thin as a blade, with white hair and eyes that still burned with the cold intelligence that had kept him alive through 6 decades of Mafia wars. When Salvatore Greco returned from Rosa's farm and delivered his report, the Don listened in absolute silence, his gnarled fingers steepled beneath his chin. The meeting took place in the Don's study, a room lined with books no one read and weapons no one touched. Greco stood before the massive desk, flanked by his 2 most trusted soldiers. Behind the Don stood his current consigliere, a nervous man named Aldo Marino, who had inherited the position after 3 predecessors had died under mysterious circumstances. "She threatens us with ledgers," Don Vittorio said finally, his voice like dry leaves scraping across stone. "Records kept by Luca Benedetti." "Yes, Don Vittorio. And she has Pietro Santoro speaking for her." "Yes." The Don's fingers drummed once against the desk. "Pietro is a fool who chose retirement over power, but he is not a liar. If he says the ledgers exist, they exist." "What would you have me do?" Greco asked. Don Vittorio stood slowly, his joints protesting the movement. He walked to the window and looked out at the darkening sea. "Tell me about the boy. You saw him with your own eyes." "He looks like Alessandro. The same eyes, the same bearing. He is the Don's son, without question. And his spirit. Is he weak, afraid?" Greco hesitated. He was calm, too calm for a boy his age facing such a situation. He watched us like he was measuring us, like Alessandro used to do. A faint smile touched the Don's lips. "Good. Then there is steel in him. That is what we need." He turned back to face the room. "The boy is Alessandro's only heir. Without him, our family dies. The other families are already circling, waiting for us to show weakness. If we do not claim him, we are finished." "But the ledgers, Don Vittorio," Aldo interjected nervously. "If she releases them, then we all burn." The Don's voice was sharp. "I am not blind to the risk, Aldo, but I am also not blind to the opportunity." "What opportunity?" "The woman asks for time, 6 years until the boy comes of age. She asks that he be allowed to choose his path." Don Vittorio returned to his desk and sat, his movements deliberate. This tells me she is not unreasonable. She is a mother protecting her child. This is something I understand. You would agree to her terms? Greco's surprise was evident. I would agree to the appearance of her terms. The Don leaned forward. We tell her yes. The boy stays with her. We allow him to grow, to learn, to become strong away from the violence that killed his father. In 6 years, when he is a man, he will choose. And by then, we will have ensured that the only logical choice is to join us. How? We give the old woman what she wants. Peace. We leave her farm alone. We make no threats. But we also begin to shape the boy from a distance. We send gifts. We tell him stories of his father's greatness. We show him the power and protection that come with being a Castellano. We make the family irresistible. Aldo frowned. And if he still chooses to walk away, then he walks away. But the ledgers remain hidden, and we survive. We find another way to rebuild our strength. The Don's eyes hardened. But I do not believe he will walk away. Blood calls to blood. Alessandro's son will become what he was always meant to be. And the ledgers? Greco asked. What if she releases them anyway? She will not. Not unless we give her reason. The woman is smart. She knows that releasing those documents would destroy not just us, but the entire system. She would become a target for every family in Sicily. She would lose everything. No, she will keep them as insurance. And as long as we keep our word, she will keep hers. The Don stood again, signaling the end of the meeting. Tomorrow morning you will return to the farm. You will tell her that I accept her terms. Marco stays with her until he turns 18. In exchange, she keeps the ledgers hidden. But you will also make it clear, if she betrays this agreement, if the boy is harmed or taken from Sicily, the consequences will be absolute. Greco bowed his head. As you command, Don Vittorio. One more thing, Salvatore. Yes, Don? Send a gift to the boy, something meaningful, a watch perhaps, one that belonged to Alessandro. Let him know that we are not his enemies. We are his family. As Greco left the estate, the moon was rising over the water. He thought about the old woman standing at her gate, threatening the most powerful families in Sicily with nothing but paper and courage. He thought about the boy with Alessandro's eyes, trapped between two worlds he had never asked to enter, and he thought about Don Vittorio's plan, which was as elegant as it was ruthless. The boy would be given a choice, but it would be a choice shaped by invisible hands, guided by whispers and gifts and carefully constructed illusions of belonging. In the end, Marco Castellano would choose the family. They always did. Back at the farm, Rosa stood on the hillside in the darkness, unable to sleep. Below, the lights of distant villages twinkled like fallen stars. Above, the real stars wheeled in their ancient patterns, indifferent to human struggles. Pietro found her there, a blanket draped over his shoulders against the night chill. You should rest. I cannot. Worrying will not change what comes tomorrow. I know. Rosa wrapped her arms around herself. But I cannot help feeling that I have set something in motion that I cannot control, like pushing a stone down a hill and watching it gather speed. You did what you had to do. You protected the boy, for now. But what happens when he is older? When he learns the full truth about his father, about that world? What if the blood is too strong? What if he chooses them despite everything? Pietro was silent for a long moment. Then you will have given him something his father never had, a choice. That is more than most men in our world ever receive. Is it enough? It will have to be. They stood together in the darkness, two old survivors watching the night. Behind them, in the warm glow of the farmhouse, 7 children slept, their dreams untouched by the machinations of dons and capos and ancient vendettas. For now, they were safe. For now, there was peace. Tomorrow would bring Greco's answer. Tomorrow would determine whether Rosa's gamble had saved them or doomed them. But tonight, under the stars that had witnessed countless betrayals and blood oaths, Rosa allowed herself a moment of hope. Maybe, just maybe, love could be stronger than blood. Maybe mercy could break the cycle of vengeance. Maybe one boy could escape the destiny written in his bones. The next morning arrived wrapped in fog, thick and grey, muffling the world in silence. Rosa woke before dawn and went through her morning routine with automatic precision, feeding the animals, starting the fire, preparing breakfast. The children woke one by one, their eyes asking questions their mouths were too afraid to voice. Pietro and Dante were already awake, positioned where they could watch the road. By mid-morning, the fog began to lift, revealing a day that was almost aggressively normal. Birds sang, the sun climbed, the goat bleated for attention, and at exactly 10 o'clock, A single black car appeared on the road. Rosa's heart hammered in her chest. She gathered the children and sent them inside with Lucia, keeping only Marco with her. Pietro stood at her right hand. Dante remained in the grove, unseen but ready. Salvatore Greco emerged from the car alone. No soldiers, no guns visible. He walked to the gate with a leather case under his arm and an expression that gave nothing away. "Signora Benedetti," he said. "Don Pietro." "Signor Greco," Rosa replied, her voice steady despite the fear coiling in her stomach. "Have you spoken with Don Vittorio?" "I have." Greco opened the leather case and withdrew a single sheet of paper, folded and sealed with red wax bearing the Castellano family crest. He passed it through the gate. The Don's decree. Rosa took the paper with trembling fingers. She broke the seal and unfolded it. The message was written in elegant script, formal and final. "To Signora Rosa Benedetti and the boy Marco, it is agreed. The boy shall remain under the Signora's care and protection until his 18th birthday. During this time, the Castellano family will make no attempt to remove him by force or coercion. When he comes of age, he will be free to choose whether to join the family or to walk his own path. In exchange, the documents held by the Signora shall remain in her possession, hidden and protected, to be used only if the terms of this agreement are violated by the Castellano family. This decree is binding upon my honor and the honor of my house. Let it be witnessed that mercy and patience can exist even in our world." Don Vittorio Castellano Rosa read it twice, searching for hidden threats or loopholes. But the language was clear. The Don had accepted her terms. She looked up at Greco. "This is genuine?" "It is. Don Vittorio has given his word, and despite what you may think of us, we do not break our oaths lightly. What guarantee do I have? You have my word as well. I will personally ensure that no one in the family violates this agreement." Greco's eyes shifted to Marco. "And the boy has the Don's promise that when his time comes to choose, no pressure will be applied. The decision will be his alone." Marco stepped forward. "Why would you agree to this? I thought I was valuable to you." "You are more valuable than you know." Greco reached into his jacket and Rosa tensed, but he only withdrew a small velvet box. He passed it through the gate to Marco. "This belonged to your father. Don Vittorio wishes you to have it." Marco opened the box. Inside was a gold watch, elegant and expensive, with an inscription on the back that read, "Time reveals all truths. Alessandro." The boy stared at it, his throat working. "Thank you. Your father was a great man, Marco. Flawed as all men are, but great. You carry his blood. That is a gift and a burden. The family hopes that when you are ready, you will want to know more about him, about where you come from. And if I do not, then you do not. The choice is yours." Greco stepped back from the gate. "Signora, the Don also wishes you to know that the farm will be left in peace. No one will trouble you. You have his protection as well as his promise." Rosa felt tears prick her eyes, but she refused to let them fall. "Tell Don Vittorio that I accept his terms, and that I will keep my word as well." "I will." Greco tipped his hat. "Until Marco's 18th birthday, then. May the years be kind to you all." He returned to the car and drove away, leaving them standing at the gate in silence. When the sound of the engine faded completely, Rosa let out a breath she had not realized she was holding. Pietro placed a hand on her shoulder. "You did it! We did it! What now?" Rosa looked at Marco, who was still staring at the watch in his hands, his expression unreadable. "Now we live. We raise these children. We tend the farm. And we trust that when the time comes, Marco will choose wisely." But even as she said it, Rosa felt a shadow of doubt, because she knew what Pietro knew, what anyone who had lived in that world knew. The Mafia never truly let go. They would wait. They would watch. They would shape and influence from a distance, patient as spiders. And in 6 years, when Marco turned 18, the real test would begin. Not a test of strength or courage, but a test of identity. Who would he choose to be? The son of a Don, destined for power and violence, or simply Marco, a boy who had been given the gift of choice? Rosa could only pray that love and peace would be enough to guide him, that the farm would shelter him from the darkness that ran in his veins. That mercy, in the end, would triumph over blood. She took Marco's hand and led him back to the house where Lucia and the other children were waiting with worried faces. When they saw Rosa smile, relief flooded through them like sunlight breaking through storm clouds. "It is over," Rosa announced. "We are safe." The children cheered, hugging each other, their joy pure and uncomplicated. Only Marco remained quiet. the watch heavy in his palm, a reminder of the father he had never known, and the future that waited for him like a promise or a threat. That night, the farm celebrated with a feast. Rosa made pasta and roasted vegetables from the garden. Pietro opened a bottle of wine he had brought from Palermo. Even Dante, the silent guardian, allowed himself a small smile as he watched the children dance and sing. But later, after the children had gone to bed and the house had fallen quiet, Rosa returned to the cellar. She placed Luca's ledgers back in their metal box, wrapped them in oilcloth, and buried them deep in the earth beneath the stone floor. Some secrets, she knew, were safest when they were forgotten. Some weapons were most powerful when they remained hidden, and some battles were won not through strength, but through patience and faith. As she climbed the stairs back to the kitchen, Rosa whispered a prayer to whatever saint still listened to women like her. She prayed for Marco's future, for the other children's safety, for the strength to guide them through the years ahead. And she prayed that when the moment of choice finally arrived, the boy would remember the love that had sheltered him more than the blood that defined him. Only time would tell if her prayers would be answered. Only time would reveal whether peace could truly break the chains of destiny. But for now, tonight, under the Sicilian stars that had witnessed so much darkness, there was light, and that was enough. 6 years passed like water through fingers, sometimes rushing, sometimes still, but always moving forward toward the inevitable moment when Marco would have to choose. Rosa watched him grow from a quiet boy into a young man who carried himself with a strange mixture of gentleness and latent power. He helped on the farm without complaint, repaired fences with steady hands, taught the younger children to read, and in the evenings would sit on the hillside watching the valley as if searching for answers in the fading light. The Castellano family kept their word. No threats came, no soldiers appeared at the gate, but they did not remain absent either. Gifts arrived on Marco's birthday each year, books about Sicilian history, a leather jacket, a motorcycle when he turned 16, and with each gift came a letter, unsigned but unmistakably from Don Vittorio, telling stories about Alessandro, how he had been fearless, how he had protected the weak, how he had commanded respect through strength tempered with wisdom. The letters never demanded anything. They simply offered belonging. Marco read them all, but never responded. He kept them in a wooden box beneath his bed, along with his father's watch, which he wore only on special occasions. Rosa never asked what he thought about them. She had learned that some questions pushed people away, rather than drawing them close. The other children grew as well. Lucia, now 21, had become Rosa's true partner in running the farm. She was engaged to a young man from the village, a carpenter named Giuseppe, who had kind eyes and no connections to the old world. The twins, Angelo and Sofia, were 13 and inseparable, already talking about leaving for university someday. Tommaso, now 10, followed Marco everywhere, worshipping him with the uncomplicated devotion of a younger brother. 3 new children had arrived during those years, 2 girls and a boy, all orphaned by accidents or illness, all welcomed into Rosa's home without hesitation. The farm had become something more than a refuge. It had become a family. But underneath the peace, Rosa felt time's weight pressing down. Marco's 18th birthday was 3 weeks away. 3 weeks until the choice that would define everything. Pietro visited often during those years, always bringing news from the world below. Don Vittorio was dying, he reported. Cancer was eating him from the inside, and the family was fracturing as various capos jockeyed for position. Salvatore Greco had risen to underboss and was consolidating power, but rivals within the organization were growing bold. The family needed Marco more than ever. On a warm evening in late summer, with Marco's birthday looming close, Rosa found him sitting on the hillside where she had stood so many times before. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of amber and rose. She sat beside him without speaking, and for a long time, they simply watched the world turn gold. "I have been thinking," Marco said finally, "about what it means to be someone's son. What have you concluded? That maybe it does not matter whose blood runs in your veins. Maybe what matters is who taught you how to live, who showed you what it means to be good." He turned to look at her, and his eyes, those storm-grey eyes that had never lost their watchfulness, were bright with unshed tears. "You saved me, Nonna Rosa, not from the Castellanos, from becoming what they wanted me to be without ever knowing there was another choice." Rosa's throat tightened. "You always had a choice, Piccolo." "Did I? Or did you fight to give me one?" He reached into his pocket and withdrew his father's watch, the gold catching the last light of day. "Every year they remind me who I am supposed to be, Don Vittorio writes about honor and duty and family, about how my father's blood demands that I take my place, about how I am the only one who can restore what was lost. What do you want, Marco? I want what everyone wants, to belong, to matter, to know that my life means something. He closed his fingers around the watch. But I do not want to matter because of who my father was. I want to matter because of who I choose to be. Then choose. It is not that simple. Why not? Marco stood and paced a few steps, his movements restless. Because I know what will happen if I walk away. The Castellanos are weak. Without an heir, they will crumble. Other families will move in. There will be war. People will die. And some of those people might be innocent, people caught in the violence, people like the children here on the farm. That is not your burden to carry, is it not? If I have the power to prevent suffering, and I choose not to use it, am I not responsible for what happens? Rosa stood and walked to him, placing her hands on his shoulders. Listen to me, Marco. The Mafia has survived for centuries by making people believe they are necessary, by making them believe that without the family, there is only chaos. But that is a lie. Communities survive without dons. People protect each other without soldiers. Justice exists outside of vendettas. You say that because you escaped, but what about those who cannot escape? What about the people trapped in that world trying to survive? You cannot save them by becoming part of the system that traps them. Marco met her eyes. What if I could change it from the inside? What if I joined them but refused to follow the old ways? What if I used my father's name to protect people instead of exploiting them? Rosa felt ice form in her chest. She had heard these words before, decades ago, from men who believed they could reform the irreformable. Luca had believed it once. So had Pietro. They had all learned the same bitter truth. The Mafia did not change. It consumed. Marco, you are young and you are good. You see the world as it should be. But the moment you step into that life, it will begin to change you. Not all at once. Not with violence at first, but slowly, choice by choice, compromise by compromise, until one day you will look in the mirror and see your father staring back. Maybe my father was not the monster they made him into. Maybe not, but he was still a Don, and Dons do not survive by being merciful. Marco turned away, his jaw tight. I have 3 weeks to decide. 3 weeks to choose between family and family, between the blood I inherited and the love I was given. His voice cracked. How do I make that choice? You listen to your heart, and you trust that whatever you choose, you will not be alone. That night, Rosa could not sleep. She walked through the dark house, checking on the children as she had done for 29 years, making sure each one was safe and warm. When she reached Marco's room, she found him sitting by the window, his father's watch in his hand, turning it over and over in the moonlight. She did not disturb him. Some decisions could only be made in solitude. 2 days later, Salvatore Greco arrived at the farm. He came alone in a simple car and waited at the gate until Rosa invited him inside. Marco was in the fields with Angelo and Tommaso, and Rosa did not call him. This conversation, she sensed, was meant for her alone. They sat in the kitchen, and Rosa served coffee. Greco looked older than she remembered. Grey had invaded his temples, and lines of worry creased his face. Don Vittorio died 3 days ago, he said without preamble. Rosa crossed herself. May he rest in peace. He will not. He lived a violent life. Peace is not granted to men like us. Greco took a sip of coffee, his hands steady, but his eyes tired. Before he died, he asked me to deliver a message to the boy. What message? Greco reached into his jacket and withdrew an envelope, sealed with the Castellano crest. He said Marco should open this on his 18th birthday, not before. He said it contains the truth about Alessandro's death. The real truth, not the version that has been told to justify vendettas and power struggles. Rosa took the envelope carefully, as if it might burn her fingers. Why would he want Marco to know this now? Because Don Vittorio believed that a man cannot make a true choice without understanding the full cost of his inheritance. Greco set down his cup. Signora, I have watched this boy from a distance for 6 years. I have read the reports, seen the photographs, listened to the stories. He is not like his father. He is better, kinder, and that terrifies me. Why? Because if he joins us, we will break him. The family is desperate. We need a symbol, an heir, someone the soldiers will follow. We will use him until there is nothing left of the boy you raised. And if he refuses us, Greco's voice dropped. There are those in the organization who see him as a threat, as a loose end, as someone who knows too much and owes too little. You promised he would be safe. Don Vittorio promised, and he kept his word until his death. But I am not Don Vittorio. I am just a man trying to hold together a crumbling empire with my bare hands. He stood. Give him the letter. Let him read his father's truth. And then, Signora Benedetti, I suggest you pray that he chooses wisely, because whatever he decides, there will be blood. After Greco left, Rosa held the envelope for a long time. She thought about burning it, about sparing Marco whatever revelations it contained, but she had promised him truth, promised him choice. She could not take that away now. On the morning of Marco's 18th birthday, the farm woke to brilliant sunshine and a sense of anticipation that hung in the air like the scent of lemons from the grove. Lucia had baked a cake. The children had made cards decorated with clumsy drawings and heartfelt messages. Even Pietro had traveled from Palermo to be present for this day. They celebrated with a simple feast at midday: pasta, roasted chicken, fresh bread, and wine for the adults. The children sang. Tommaso gave Marco a wooden carving of a horse he had made himself. The twins presented a book of poetry they had copied by hand. Lucia hugged him and whispered that no matter what he chose, he would always be her brother. Marco smiled and thanked them all, but Rosa could see the weight in his eyes. He knew what this day meant, what would be required of him before the sun set. After the meal, Rosa took him aside to the small shed where they had spoken 6 years ago. She handed him the envelope from Don Vittorio. What is this? The truth about your father's death. Don Vittorio wanted you to have it before you make your choice. Marco stared at the envelope as if it were a snake. I do not know if I want to know. Then do not read it. The choice is yours, but Marco, whatever you decide about this letter, about the family, about your future, know that I love you. Know that you will always have a home here. Know that you are more than your father's son. You are yourself, and that is enough. She left him alone with the letter and walked back to the house. Inside, the children were cleaning up from the feast, their voices bright with laughter. Pietro stood by the window, watching the road as he always did. What do you think he will choose? Pietro asked quietly. I do not know. If he goes to them, he will be devoured. I know. And if he refuses, he may not survive the night. I know that too. Rosa joined him at the window. But I cannot make this choice for him. No one can. He must decide who he wants to be. An hour passed. Then 2. The sun began its descent toward the horizon, casting long shadows across the farm. Finally, Marco emerged from the shed. His face was pale, his eyes red from crying, and in his hand he held the opened letter. He walked directly to Rosa and pulled her into a fierce embrace. Thank you, he whispered, for everything, for saving me, for loving me, for giving me 6 years of peace when I should have had none. What did the letter say? Marco pulled back and she saw a terrible clarity in his eyes. My father was murdered by his own family, by Don Vittorio's orders. They told everyone it was a rival clan, but it was them. They killed him because he wanted to change things. He wanted to stop the drug trade, to end the violence against civilians, to turn the organization into something legitimate. And for that vision, they put 3 bullets in his head and threw his body in the sea. Rosa's breath caught. Marco, Don Vittorio wrote that he has regretted it every day since, that without Alessandro's strength, the family began to rot from the inside, that he spent the last 6 years of his life hoping I would be different, hoping I would succeed where my father failed. Marco's hands clenched into fists. He wanted me to join them and finish what my father started. To redeem the family, to make his murder mean something. What will you do? Marco looked at her for a long moment. Then he reached up and unclasped his father's watch from his wrist. He held it out to her. I want you to keep this, to remember that blood is not destiny, that love is stronger than legacy. You are refusing them. I am choosing my own path. I am choosing this farm, these children, this life. He glanced back toward the house where Tommaso was visible through the window, laughing at something Angelo had said. My father tried to change a corrupt system from within, and it killed him. I will not make that mistake. I will change the world by living differently, by showing that there is another way. Relief and fear warred in Rosa's chest. They will not accept this easily. I know, but I am ready to face whatever comes. That night, as the family gathered one more time around the long table, Marco stood and asked for their attention. In simple words, he told them about his father, about the choice he had been given, about the decision he had made. I am staying here, he said, with all of you. You are my family, not because of blood, but because of love, and I will spend my life honoring the gift Nonna Rosa gave me, the gift of choice, of freedom, of becoming someone worth being. The children cheered. Lucia cried. Pietro nodded with satisfaction, and Rosa felt something break open in her chest, a knot of fear she had carried for 6 years finally releasing. But the celebration was cut short by the sound of cars on the road. Many cars. Their headlights swept across the farm like searchlights, and their engines rumbled with menace. "Get the children to the cellar," Rosa commanded. "Now!" Lucia moved immediately, herding the younger ones toward the kitchen. Pietro and Marco moved to flank Rosa as she walked to the front door. Outside, at least a dozen men had emerged from 5 black cars, all armed, all watching the house with predatory intensity. Salvatore Greco stood at their center, but he was no longer in command. Beside him stood a younger man, perhaps 40, with sharp features and eyes like chips of obsidian. This was Nico Castellano, Don Vittorio's nephew, who had apparently assumed control of the family. Rosa opened the door and stepped outside. Marco stayed close behind her. "Signor Greco," Rosa said, "I did not expect such a large party." "This is not my doing, Signora," Greco replied, his voice tight with tension. "Nico has assumed leadership of the family. He wishes to speak with Marco." Nico stepped forward, his movements controlled and dangerous. "Marco Castellano, your birthday has arrived. Your time to choose. So choose. Do you join your family? Do you take your father's place, or do you spit on his memory and hide behind an old woman's skirts?" Marco stepped past Rosa, moving down the stairs until he stood face to face with Nico. They were nearly the same height, but Marco's calm was absolute while Nico radiated coiled violence. "I choose to stay here," Marco said clearly. "I choose the life my father wanted but never got to live, a life without violence, without exploitation, without blood. I choose peace." "Peace!" Nico spat the word like a curse. "You are Alessandro's son. You were born to lead, to command, to take what is ours by right. I was born to be myself, nothing more, nothing less. Then you are a coward and a traitor to your blood. I am neither. I am simply a man who refuses to inherit his father's mistakes." Nico's hand moved toward his jacket, but Greco caught his wrist. "Stop. We gave our word. 6 years of peace, and the boy chooses freely. Those were Don Vittorio's terms. Don Vittorio is dead. His terms died with him. The code does not die. Honor does not die." "Honor?" Nico wrenched his arm free. "What honor is there in watching our family crumble while this bastard plays farmer? What honor is there in letting him walk away?" "The honor of keeping our word," Pietro said, stepping forward. He was old and unarmed, but his voice carried the weight of decades of respect. "I witnessed Don Vittorio's decree. I vouch for its integrity. If you violate it, Nico, you violate everything we are supposed to stand for. You become no better than the animals we claim to despise." Nico's jaw worked. Around them his soldiers shifted, hands near weapons, waiting for the order. The moment stretched thin as wire, ready to snap into violence. Then Marco spoke again, his voice calm, but carrying across the night like a bell. "Nico Castellano, you want an heir. You want someone the family will follow. But following me means following a new path. If you truly believe the Castellano name means something, then let it mean honor. Let it mean keeping your word. Let me go, and show the world that this family is more than guns and threats. And if I refuse, then you prove my father was right to want to change things, and you prove that the family he loved is already dead." Silence fell over the farm. Even the night birds seemed to hold their breath. Nico stared at Marco with something between hatred and grudging respect. Finally he turned to Greco. "Is this what you want? To let him go?" Greco met his gaze steadily. "It is what Don Vittorio wanted. It is what the code demands, and yes, it is what I want. Because that boy has more courage in his refusal than any of us have shown in our obedience." Nico's hands clenched into fists. For a long moment, Rosa was certain violence would erupt, that blood would soak into the Sicilian soil once more, that everything would end in the same darkness that had claimed so many lives before. But then Nico stepped back. "You are exiled, Marco Castellano. You have no name, no family, no protection. If we ever meet again, you are a stranger to me. And if you ever speak of our business, if you ever threaten us with those ledgers your guardian holds, I will kill everyone you love." "Slowly, do you understand?" "I understand. Then live your peaceful life and pray we never cross paths again." Nico turned and strode back to his car. His soldiers followed, casting dark looks at Marco, at Rosa, at the farm that had defied them. Greco remained a moment longer. "You chose well," he said to Marco. "Your father would be proud." "Did you know?" About Don Vittorio ordering his death? Greco's face was unreadable. I knew. So I have carried that knowledge for 3 years like a stone in my chest, but I could not act, could not speak because I was afraid. You have more courage than I ever did. He walked to his car and drove away. One by one the vehicles departed, their taillights disappearing down the hill until only dust and silence remained. Rosa collapsed onto the front steps, her legs finally giving way. Marco sat beside her, and together they watched the stars emerge in the darkening sky. "It is over," Marco whispered. "Yes, they could still come back. They could, but they will not. Not tonight. Maybe not ever." Rosa took his hand. "You stood up to them, Marco. You chose yourself. That is the bravest thing I have ever seen." The door opened, and the children spilled out, led by Tommaso, who threw himself into Marco's arms. "You stayed! You stayed!" "I stayed," Marco confirmed, hugging the boy tight. One by one the others came, Lucia crying and laughing, the twins dancing, even the newer children who barely knew what they were celebrating but felt the joy nonetheless. Pietro emerged last, a rare smile on his weathered face. "Well done, boy. Well done." That night, the farm celebrated again, but this time it was different. This time it was freedom they were toasting. A choice made, a destiny rejected, a future earned rather than inherited. As the children finally went to bed and quiet settled over the house once more, Rosa and Marco sat together on the hillside where they had shared so many conversations over the years. "What will you do now?" Rosa asked. "I will live. I will help you with the farm. I will watch these children grow, and someday, when I am ready, I will tell my own children about a woman who defied the Mafia with nothing but courage and love, about how she saved a boy who was supposed to be a monster and taught him how to be a man instead. You were never going to be a monster, Marco. You were always yourself, because you gave me the chance to be." They sat in companionable silence, watching the lights of distant villages twinkle like promises of ordinary, beautiful, unremarkable lives. Down in the valley, the Mafia would continue its endless cycles of violence and betrayal. Families would rise and fall. Blood would be spilled. Vendettas would be sworn and settled. But up on the hillside, in a small farmhouse surrounded by lemon trees and olive groves, 7 children slept peacefully under the protection of an old woman who had once been a Consigliere's wife and a young man who had chosen love over legacy. The Castellano name would fade from Marco's life, like morning mist burning away in sunlight. He would become simply Marco, farmer, brother, son of the woman who had saved him. And that, Rosa thought as she finally rose to go inside, was the greatest victory of all. Not defeating the Mafia, but proving that escape was possible. That choice was real, that love could break even the strongest chains of blood and destiny. As she tucked herself into bed that night, Rosa whispered a prayer of gratitude to Luca, to whatever saint still listened, to the universe itself. "Thank you for this boy. Thank you for these children. Thank you for showing me that even in the darkest world, light can survive." And outside, under the ancient Sicilian stars, the farm kept its secrets and its promises, a small island of peace in a sea of violence, enduring because one woman had refused to surrender and one boy had dared to choose himself. The end